I am Cara, the pastry chef at the Green Owl. So we're going to talk about cheesecake today, and I brought a bunch of vanilla cheesecake for everybody to try. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just show you how I like to get my cheesecakes out of the pan once they're in there, because it's in there pretty good now. I know not everybody has a blowtorch, but this is one of the more fun parts of my job. So I use a blowtorch. A pastry chef up in Ashland at a bakery up there, a friend of mine showed me this tip to get the cheesecakes out of the pan without having to take a knife and kind of hack around it and kind of chew up the sides of it. So the heat actually just kind of gets it melted around the sides a little bit and it just pops right out, usually. Sometimes it needs a little bit of help. So I just go around the edge of it. And this little blowtorch just came from like Ace Hardware, but you can get like fancy blowtorches for like creme brulees at like a kitchen store, like a little mini one. And I just kind of loosely, you know, warm it up, and I'm not really trying to cook it or anything. So if you don't have a blowtorch, another trick to get them out of the pans really easily is to warm up your knife. And just use like a butter knife, warm it up with either run under hot water. However, that's probably the easiest way. And then just really carefully go around the edge, and the heat will help melt it away without chewing up the sides of your cheesecake. So this is just my basic vanilla cheesecake recipe. And then from this basic recipe, you can create pretty much any flavor you want. So I'm just using a towel because it's going to be hot. Undid the clip. And then I just sort of wiggle it. Just wiggle it a little. It's coming away. There. Try to get under here. And then it's release the bottom. There. Wow. So my helpers are going to cut this cheesecake the rest of the way in the back and get ready to sample it. But I'll show you one of my tricks for slicing cheesecakes so they look nice. As I get a pitcher of water, hot water, and I put my knife in there. And then I have another towel, clean towel, that I wipe the knife off with. So that way the knife is nice and hot and it just kind of slides right through. Actually, I'm going to take it off of this pan because the edge of the pan is getting in the way of the knife here. Okay, so now wipe the blade clean after your cuts, because if you don't, maybe I'll just show you real quick. There's a little bit of schmeg on the knife here, and if you don't wipe it off, maybe you can see it. You're going to leave this little, can you see it? Probably can't see it. It leaves like a little trail of kind of schmeg on the top of the piece, which isn't very pretty. So for the restaurant, you know, I like them to look nice and presentable and beautiful. But if you're doing this at home and you don't care and you're just going to eat it, whatever. Don't wipe off your knife if you don't want to. All right. Yeah, nice and clean. So I noticed too that if my knife, I don't dip it after every single cut, like every few cuts. As the knife cools down, I notice that the topping starts to like pull in. Like if you're cutting it like normal wedge shapes, the very tip of it won't slice nice. It'll like kind of twirl and twist because it's being pulled by the knife that's not hot. So the hot knife definitely helps a lot. So I can probably send this back with my assistants, and they'll finish cutting it, and then soon they'll walk around with a bunch of cheesecake samples for you to try. All right. Okay, so this is your basic ingredients for cheesecake. I'm going to do a gluten-free version today, so that's why I have the tapioca flour here. But you can use regular flour if you don't care about gluten. A little bit of flour just kind of helps thicken it a little bit. I brought this just to show, I use this in the crust or earth balance and melt it and mix it with cookie crumbs. So I made a crust ahead of time because you have to bake it a little bit first. So this is a chocolate crust. All I did is I had some graham crackers. I mixed some cocoa powder in there with it, a little bit of sugar, and then melted some Spectrum Natural Organic shortening, and just tossed it till the crumbs were sticky enough to pat in there. And then I baked it for about 10-15 minutes.
Can you repeat what you had in there again?
Sure, so it's graham cracker crumbs, and I actually make my own at the Green Owl so I can have gluten-free ones, but if you just don't care about that, you can get like, I think it's Nabisco? No, it's not Nabisco, it's the Keebler. Keeblers are vegan, no honey in those or anything. There's a lot of other brands that are vegan. You can get like more natural brands at the co-op. And not every cookie behaves the same way. But the cocoa powder, I don't remember how much I put in there. I don't always measure. Sometimes I just do it till it looks right with cocoa powder. If I want it lightly chocolatey or super dark chocolatey, it just depends on how much I want to put in. And then shortening. Pinch of salt, a little bit of sugar.
What kind of shortening?
It's this Spectrum Natural Organic shortening. So, and this is actually really important too. If you guys all know, the palm plantations are not good for the local orangutan. So this is a really good brand because they don't deforest habitats for orangutans. All right, so moving on, we're gonna put some silken tofu, in the food processor. So this is just regular silken tofu firm. You can get this, a lot of different companies make this. You can get it in soft or extra firm. So I think the firm works really good for cheesecakes. The soft version doesn't really work as good. But if that's all you have, or if you bought the wrong kind, you can also add a little bit of extra of your flour, tapioca flour, or earthbound, or egg replacer powder. So this is the Energy brand egg replacer powder, but there's a lot of different companies out there that make egg replacer powder. They all pretty much behave the same way. Okay, so I don't want to mix everything at once because the cream cheese is thicker and harder to mix. So what I want to do is I want to make sure the tofu gets mixed with all my thickening powders and my sugar first. So I got my sugar pre-measured for one cheesecake here. It's a 1.5 cups there. And then I just put 1 tablespoon of the egg replacer powder right in there. I don't mix it up into an egg first, where a lot of the egg replacer, to make an egg, you want to mix it with water first. But since this is going into a liquidy batter, it's okay that it just goes right in there. So 1 tablespoon of that. And then I'm going to put about 1.5 tablespoons of the tapioca. So today's cheesecake, we're going to make mocha java cheesecake today. So normally I would put, for the vanilla, I would put lemon juice in there with it, but I'm not going to put lemon juice in the mocha java. So I'm going to put some vanilla in here though. And instead of lemon juice, I have some strong brewed coffee and a little bit of espresso liqueur. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of that in there. Get this all mixed up. And partway through, you want to scrape it down the sides. Get every little bit in there. And so what you want to do is you want to try to make sure your powders and your sugars look pretty dissolved. And it looks like it needs a little more time. I don't know how easy that is to see on the Jumbotron, but it's a little grainy still, so I'm going to let it mix a little longer. So I just brought a little bit of kosher salt with me too. I'm going to put just a couple pinches in there. Brings out the sweetness. So I have my cream cheese. This is Tofutti brand vegan cream cheese, soy-based. And it's been softened. I don't always have time to soften it when I'm working on Mondays at the Green Owl. But it blends fine if it's not softened. It just takes a little longer, and you might end up with a couple of chunks that didn't blend up. It's when you're pouring in your cheesecake pan. But if I find those, I just pull them out.
How do you soften it?
I just let it sit out. Yeah. So this is 1.5 pounds of cream cheese, which I believe is, we buy it in bulk at the Green Owl. So the little containers that they come in at like the grocery store, I think it's 3 containers. It makes 1.5 pounds. All right, so now I got my cream cheese mixed in with my tofu mixture. And we're just gonna blend this until it's smooth. Okay, a little on the edges I wanna scrape down and keep going until it's all incorporated. So I'm just going to check for lumps, if there's any big chunks, and it doesn't seem to be. It looks about the right consistency. So, to make any other flavor of cheesecake, you got to know what your base should look like. So it's got fairly runny, but still thick. So if you want to add, if you wanted to make like a key lime cheesecake, you're going to want to add like 1/2 cup of lime juice. Well, 1/4 cup. I usually make 2 at a time in a bigger thing at work. So about 1/4 cup of lime juice. Since you're adding so much liquid, you're going to want to add some more of these powders to thicken it some more. So regular flour if you don't care about the gluten, or like maybe another tablespoon of flour or another tablespoon of egg replacer powder or tapioca. Depends on how much liquid you're adding. I've had pretty good luck just sort of guessing how much extra, but definitely if you add more liquid, you got to add more thickener. Or if you add more stuff that's going to make it thicker, you need to add some more liquid. So that's what we're going to do next, because we're going to add cocoa powder. It's going to thicken it up. So we're going to swirl two colors of cheesecake together. So I'm going to pour this first one into here, but I'm only going to pour like half of it. That looks pretty good. Put this back together, and then we're going to add cocoa powder to it. Okay, so this is just regular old cocoa powder. It's not Dutch processed, it's just regular cocoa powder. I'm not going to put all of it in there. So we're just going to start with about 1/4 cup, and we're going to blend it in and see what that looks like. I think it could be chocolatier. It's kind of like a light chocolate, so I like it dark. So I'm going to put another 1/4 cup in there. And I don't know if you can tell so far, but it's definitely thickened up a lot. So we'll mix this up again. I'll show you how much thicker it is, and we'll compare to the consistency of the original batter. So right now at the Green Owl there is, I think, if they didn't sell out today, but there's some of the blueberry lemon poppy seed cheesecake. So that one, I add a good bit of lemon juice to it to make it lemon, so I have to add more tapioca to it. The tapioca works really good in cheesecakes. I feel like it actually works a little bit better than in the plain flour. So this looks about the right color of chocolate I was going for. Nice and dark, but too thick. So you need to add some sort of liquid. So I brought with me today that coffee strong coffee and espresso liqueur. And I'm just going to put a couple tablespoons in to start with, because we're just trying to match the same consistency. So this works good with for making the peanut butter chocolate cheesecakes. If I add peanut butter, I'll just add a little extra soy milk to thin it down. So it looks pretty close to the other consistency, still a little thick, so we're going to add a little bit more of our coffee mixture. Because we want them to bake at the same, we want them to not have weird texture between the swirls. We want them to be pretty similar in the consistency.
Did you preheat the pan at all?
I didn't, because this pan actually has well, it's dirty now, you can't really see, but it has a Teflon kind of a non-stick coating. So now it looks too thin. So you know what we can do? We can add a little bit more cocoa powder. So so actually, if you're working on your crusts and you realize that you put too much shortening in, you can always just add a little flour to it to bring it back to the right consistency. All right, we're gonna put maybe not quite half a quarter cup there. So since we can't bake this one today, we can't try it, but I was going to take it back to the Green Owl and bake it, and it'll probably be on the menu at the beginning of the week, next week on Tuesday. So this looks better. Yeah, it looks like it's about the same consistency of the other one. So it should be thick, but still kind of runny. Yeah. So there's a couple different ways you could make this happen. You could pour, instead of pouring the one flavor directly in the pan, you can pour it in another container and you can kind of alternate the different color batters and then swirl it together. Or this is the way I'm going to do it now, since I already did it that way. I just take a spoonful. Can you guys see it? There we go. And just kind of plop it in there. Plop it in there hard enough so it actually sinks down in there. So it's not just sitting on the surface. And then just keep doing that around the cheesecake until you get it all in there. So on a cheesecake like this, I will put a chocolate ganache topping on. And all I do for that is I just use vegan chocolate chips, soy milk that I heat up, a little bit of vanilla. I'll probably put more of this in the chocolate ganache for this one, just to keep the flavor consistent, more of the coffee. Usually put a generous pinch of salt in my chocolate ganache too, and then you let the hot milk kind of melt the chips, and then you just whisk it till it's smooth, and then you pour it on your top of your cheesecake, but after it's baked. So that's why we can't do it today. So I usually do, if I'm doing a cheesecake like this where I'm taking half the batter, I usually try to put a little bit more than half the batter in the pan first, and have a little bit less stuff to add to it, because we're running out of areas to put the other one. And then, where is I just use a butter knife to swirl it together. And you want to be careful not to drag onto your crust too much. You can feel for the bottom of it, and just kind of carefully move things around. You want to try to get the knife down to the bottom. And I usually kind of scoop with the whole width of the knife a little bit. Try to move more of the cheesecake to make the swirls a little bit bigger. So since there's a lot on the surface, it's kind of hard to see, but once this cuts, you'll see more of the lighter colors in each slice. There. So then that will just go in the oven. I don't usually do any kind of water bath with a vegan cheesecake because I don't really have any problems with it cracking. Usually that's an egg thing. If you're making a normal cheesecake with dairy and eggs, you're supposed to like put it in a pan with some water, like bake it in the water, or put water in the oven so it's got like moisture in the oven, and then so the eggs don't, because you know how sometimes pumpkin pies have those big cracks down the middle? That's like an egg thing. So if you ever go to Thanksgiving and somebody brings a non-vegan pumpkin pie made with eggs and it's cracked, now you know that's why I did that. It wasn't cooled properly or something with the moisture. So I do all my cheesecakes at 350, and sometimes it depends on the cheesecake. Like if there's a lot of fruit in it or extra added moisture, they may bake a little bit longer. But typically they bake for about 40 to like 55 minutes at 350. But that's in a convection oven too. So in a regular non-convection oven, it'll probably take a little bit longer.
How do you know when it's done?
So when it's done, I look at the surface of the cheesecake, and if it looks a little bit wet or jelly-like, it's not done yet. I usually let it go until the surface of it looks pretty dry. And sometimes the surface gets a little bit of golden areas, like the vanilla ones gets a little golden. And also I kind of jiggle it a little bit. Like obviously this is not baked, so it's super jiggly. But it'll be fairly set about 1.5 inches in, where it won't be jiggling at all, but it'll still jiggle a little bit in the middle, but not a lot. Like some of the fruitier ones, like the one that I just made with the blueberries in it, I was like, kept checking it. I'm like, is it done? Like, oh, let it go a little longer, because sometimes the fruity ones, they'll get, when you cut them, they're still good, but if they're super soft a little bit, like, then I think it needed to have been baked maybe another 5-10 minutes. So, yeah. Any question?
Is there another brand of cream cheese?
Yeah. I've tried some of the other brands out there, and I haven't really noticed too much of a difference between those two. We've just been able to get I think it's like a 30-pound box that we can get from our distributor, so it's cheaper and a good deal. But the other brands so far don't have the big bulk packaging yet. So, but yeah, I have done. I think the Daya cream cheese is pretty good, and then the Follow Your Heart also is pretty good. I do notice a slight taste difference between the Follow Your Heart and the Tofutti, but it's not in a bad way by any means, so it's just a little bit. I have discovered a new technique for doing rhubarb. I used to just chop it up and put it in a saucepan, or a big saucepan, add sugar, and just kind of keep stirring it. But it breaks down when you're constantly stirring it. So what I started doing is I chop it up into nice sized chunks, and I spread it onto a big sheet pan. Well, I put it in a bowl and I coat it with sugar a little bit first, and then I spread it onto a sheet pan and I roast it in the oven. And it really only takes about maybe 15 minutes tops to roast it, because I want it to still have a little bit of, I don't want it to be completely mush. So yeah, so then they're all like still intact, nice pieces, and I can spread them on the bottom of the cheesecake. Yeah. Yeah, the rhubarb one is one that I try to do every spring when rhubarb is in season. And I usually make it pretty much the same way every time. I add a little orange blossom water to mine. So that's my little secret ingredient that you guys know about now. It's not so secret anymore. But, and I always put a little bit of cinnamon in the crust on that one too, and a little bit of ginger. Yeah, and then I take the rest of it and I puree it and I put it on the topping for that one too. So.
After it bakes, will the top of it be smooth, or will it still have the same consistency?
Okay, so yeah, this one, so right now it does have a little bit of a texture from all my knife dragging through there, and that will smooth out. So the vanilla cheesecake that you guys tried, I also do a sour cream topping on that one. So that's my little trick to make them look pretty, because they do get a little bit golden, kind of browned around the edges a lot, and like, I mean, I guess that's fine, but like, I just like it to look all pretty and white, so then I make that cream cheese topping for it, mixed with a little bit of more vanilla and lemon and sugar, and after it's baked initially, then I pour on the cream cheese mix and just bake it for another like 15 minutes. Long enough so that it sets but it doesn't turn brown.
Do you have to chill it after it bakes before before you serve?
Yeah, no, it definitely needs to chill for several hours. I would say a minimum of 3 hours in the fridge before you cut it. Because it will be kind of liquidy still when you take it out. I mean, it'll still have a little bit of jiggle in the middle, and if you try to cut it, or even if you just try to take it out of the pan, it would probably just go just flatten and smush out everywhere. So before I had a pastry chef job at a non-vegan restaurant up in northern Wisconsin, and I had a cheesecake there that I made that was to die for. Everybody loved it. It was one I did fairly regularly. And I've done it, a vegan version of the Green Owl before. It's a caramel cashew cheesecake. And I always remember this because I usually don't cut them until the next day because I need time to sit. Well, somebody was there during the day and saw me make it, and then somebody told somebody, and somebody told their table, and so the table wanted it, and I was already gone for the day, and one of the cooks decided to open it up and cut it and just ruined it. So yeah, I think 3 hours is pretty much a minimum you want to wait before you cut it. Overnight is best, I think, though. So if you can make it the night before and cut it the next day, that's probably best.
I think that you could make it, like, instead of the cream cheese, like, using cashew cream.
Yeah, so I make raw vegan cheesecakes that way. So instead of the cream cheese, the soy-based cream cheese, I'll take cashews, and like raw cashews, and I'll soak them for a few hours. And then those get blended up with other liquid ingredients like some lemon juice or orange juice, whatever flavor you want to add to it. You can just put a little bit of water. Sometimes I use coconut water to thin it down a little bit. And then a little bit of coconut oil melted down and added to it when it's mixing. So when it chills, that coconut oil holds it together. So that one doesn't need to bake at all, and it could be soy-free that way too. But very high nuts that way.
Would you use ground flaxseed?
Well, I think the ground flaxseed probably wouldn't work for this one because it would leave like a texture and you would see the flecks of it and stuff in there. Sometimes I'll use flax seeds in like a carrot cake because that way, I mean, it's not cheesecake, but at least that way it's like kind of disguised within the cake with all the other textures and stuff in there. Yeah. I haven't really tried experimenting to see what it would do without it. If I just added more tapioca, but I have thought that might work just fine. The thing about putting too much tapioca in is if you go too much tapioca, it kind of turns rubbery texture. So I wouldn't want to go too many extra spoonfuls of tapioca.
Where can I find more information about some classes that you might teach?
Well, I don't have anything scheduled right now, but sometimes like on the Willie Street Co-op, they have like the calendar of all their classes that are upcoming. They usually try to schedule out like a season at a time, they'll contact teachers and have them sign up like a couple months before, for like a 3 or 4 month run of classes. So I guess it just depends on when they're doing their next one. Yeah, I mean, sorry, I don't have anything scheduled right now. But yeah, just keep your eyes peeled for stuff at the co-op. And then if I ever do get some classes scheduled, I will always promote them on the Green Owls page too. Well, thanks so much for coming, everybody. Did mostly everybody get samples? All right. Thank you.